In the autobiography of the novelist Compton Mackenzie, he mentions one of his more curious pastimes. He enjoyed scouring newspapers for various incidents where the term literally was misused. So here are some of the examples that he quotes. He is literally here, there and everywhere. In this case, the wish was literally father to the thought. To this day, I see his face exactly as I saw it then, stricken and defiant, blazing with an anger that seemed literally volcanic. Of course, if this person's anger was literally volcanic, he would be spewing magma and intensely hot ash from the various orifices on his face, in which case he should definitely see his GP. Here's another example that Mackenzie quotes from a review of a production of Frankenstein written in The Guardian. This is what it says. The monster's death in an avalanche on the Jura Mountains is noisy enough to literally bring down the house. If this did literally happen, one wonders how many members of the audience perished in the accident. Now, Compton Mackenzie was indulging in this hobby of collecting literalies back in the early 20th century, but the error has never really gone away. Anyone who is online will have seen activists saying that someone or other is literally Hitler, even though only Hitler was literally Hitler. Or how about the claim that words are literal violence? Such activists are, of course, butchering the English language. That's another metaphor, by the way. But literal-minded people have always existed, but the tendency for literal-mindedness among modern social justice activists is particularly pronounced. When a couple of weeks ago, the Pleasance Theatre Trust defended its cancellation of the comedian Jerry Sadowitz's stand-up show, it issued a statement saying that opinions such as those displayed on stage by Sadowitz are not acceptable. But jokes aren't opinions, they're jokes. The chicken didn't literally cross the road, unless by literally you mean figuratively, and even then there isn't an actual chicken or a road. Just as words aren't violence, jokes aren't real life. Now, I've spoken before on this show about how the companies that compile dictionaries are now seemingly staffed by activists. The role of the dictionary is to record common usage, but over the past few years, you'll have noticed that some staff members at dictionary companies change definitions to better suit their ideological creed, an attempt at social engineering, you might call it. Because really, the culture war is all about language and who gets to define the meanings of words. So take America's oldest dictionary, Merriam-Webster, whose contributors have deemed it necessary to change the definition of the word racism to reflect systemic oppression. Now, most people understand racism to be hatred or prejudice against others due to their race. But for social justice activists, racism is an equation, prejudice plus power, which is why they say that only white people can be racist. That's why when two Indian teenagers were arrested at a football game in New Jersey, having verbally abused and urinated on a group of black schoolgirls, the New York Times didn't say this was a racist attack, but that the perpetrators were enacting whiteness. And all of this constant redefinition is maddening because it means you're forever doubting your senses. Here's another example of the Merriam-Webster dictionary changing definitions to suit their ideology. This is how they've defined female for many years. Of, relating to, or being the sex that typically has the capacity to bear young or produce eggs. But sometime in the past few months, they sneakily added this second definition, which is having a gender identity that is the opposite of male. So all of a sudden, being female is being defined in terms of what it's not. Have they been getting Baldrick to write their definitions?
And what about D?
I'm quite pleased with dog.
Yes, and your definition of dog is?
Not a cat.
When the compilers of dictionaries are telling you that words no longer mean what you think they mean, it's a means of control. As the science fiction writer Philip K. Dick said, the basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use the words. And this is also why so many people go along with social justice activists. After all, they claim to be in favour of social justice. Who wouldn't be in favour of that? And yet their ideas seem so regressive, calling for censorship, removing books from library shelves, dividing people by skin colour, encouraging young gay people to think there's something wrong with them and they might need medication. Most of us can see how regressive this stuff is, but wait, they call themselves progressive. They call themselves left-wing, but they don't seem to care about redressing economic inequality. In fact, they often seem to demonise the working class. They say they're for justice, but they seem to bully and attack decent people and ruin their livelihoods. For people who claim to be on the right side of history, their viciousness knows no bounds. Confusing, isn't it? Just like when people in black masks calling themselves anti-fascist or Antifa for short are pepper spraying Trump voters or attacking feminists in the name of compassion. I mean, isn't violence used to suppress opposition a fascistic tactic? But authoritarians always misuse words. They always have. Do you really think that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is an authentic democracy? So why then ought you to assume that those claiming to be promoting social justice are doing anything of the kind? Take the phrase anti-racism. Up until relatively recently, the phrase anti-racist was universally understood as straightforwardly signalling an opposition to racist attitudes and behaviour. But Ibram X. Kendi, author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, writes that the claim of not racist neutrality is a mask for racism. Alana Lentin, author of Why Race Still Matters, takes it a step further, arguing that to be not racist is a form of discursive racist violence. So to be not racist is a form of racism. This ideology has spread because it uses appealing words to describe some terrible ideas. I mean, who wouldn't say that they were anti-racist? We're all against racism. But anti-racist activists are telling us that not being racist is a form of racism and that we must be actively anti-racist. But what they mean by that is that we must accept the presupposition of critical race theory that racism underpins all human interactions and that all white people are inherently complicit. In other words, people are being coerced into accepting some very regressive ideas because the fear of being branded as racist is so great. Now, let's take another example. Remember when all those Labour MPs held up those signs saying they wanted to ban trans conversion therapy? Now, conversion therapy is a terrible thing. I mean, one thinks of how gay people used to be wired up to electrodes and tortured in an effort to make them straight. But what activists are calling trans conversion therapy is something very different. It's simply when specialists talk to children about their feelings of gender dysphoria to determine what other factors might be at play. In most cases, gender non-conforming kids grow up to be gay, and they are often simply struggling with their homosexuality. But the scandal at the Tavistock Clinic has shown how many of these children were fast-tracked into medicalisation to be fixed in accordance with heterosexual assumptions. Now, that's a form of conversion therapy. So when these Labour MPs hold up signs saying they want a ban on conversion therapy, they are in truth supporting conversion therapy. And this is why, at the end of the day, we have to restore the shared definitions of words. We need to be wary of activists who redefine words while denying that they are doing so. We need to keep an eye on those dictionaries, because these changes are being implemented all the time. Language evolves, and that's natural and inevitable. But when changes to language are imposed, that's authoritarian. Oh, by the way, I've noticed that the Merriam-Webster dictionary has recently added a new definition of the word literally. Now, if you go to the website, you can still see the original meaning, which is in a literal sense or manner, but you can also now see this secondary meaning, which appeared a couple of months ago. In effect, virtually, used in an exaggerated way to emphasize a statement or description that is not literally true or possible. So when The Guardian back in 1930 claimed that the play literally brought the house down, they weren't wrong, because under the new definitions, literally can literally mean figuratively. Just as progressive can mean regressive, liberal can mean illiberal, and social justice can mean social injustice. No wonder everyone's so confused.